Hello, YouTubers, and welcome to Level-Headed News. This is your host, Brenda. Welcome to the 16th day of January 2017. Happy Martin Luther King Day to those of you who celebrate that. We've got two episodes for you this morning. This episode has 5 articles in it, and the URLs are in the description of the video for your convenience. The first article here is off of Newsmax.com, and it says, Obama tells 60 Minutes he made decision UN-Israel vote. President Barack Obama told 60 Minutes that he made the call for the U.S. to abstain from a vote on the UN Security Council resolution condemning Israeli settlements, allowing the resolution to pass, and that doing so didn't fray relations between the two countries. The move caused major fallout between the United States and Israel, a notion Obama demurred Steve Croft in an interview that aired on Sunday. I don't think it caused a major rupture in relations between the United States and Israel. If you're saying that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu got fired up, he's been fired up repeatedly during the course of my presidency around the Iran deal and around our consistent objection to settlements. It wasn't true, Obama said in his final interview as president. And despite all the noise and hullabaloo, cooperation, intelligence cooperation, all of that has continued, he said. We have defended them consistently in every imaginable way, but I also believe that both for our national interest and national interest, that allowing an ongoing conflict between Israelis and Palestinians that could get worse and worse over time is a problem. And that settlement, and that settlements contribute. They're not the sole reason for it, but they're a continuing factor to the inability to solve that problem. Israelis have continued to settle on Palestinian property since it began in 1993. West Bank settlers then numbered 100,000. Today, they total around 400,000. The increase of those settlements, Obama told 60 Minutes, has gotten so substantial, limiting the possibility for effective contiguous Palestinian state. Because of our investment in the region and because we care so deeply about Israel, I think the U.S. has a legitimate interest in saying to a friend, this is a problem, Obama said. It would have long-term consequences for peace and security in the region and the United States. The outgoing president reflected on his legacy and his biggest challenges during his 8 years in office during the hour-long interview. A number of his policies, from healthcare to his contentious relationship with Israel, could be short-lived as President-elect Donald Trump becomes the 45th president later this week and vows to reverse some of those policies. Trump has been vocal about his disapproval of many of Obama's policies, often voicing the disagreement or engaging in public disputes with the president on Twitter. Most recently, Trump lashed out over comments Obama made that he would have beaten Trump if they ran against each other in a general election. Reflected on his approach to civil war in Syria as it approaches its 6th year with hundreds of thousands of dead and millions displaced around the world. The president acknowledged his red line declaration about use of chemical weapons by Syria President Bashar Assad's government 2012 speech, and that he didn't have to use those words. He later prompted harsh criticism since the U.S. did not follow through on the threat. I would have, I think, made a bigger mistake if I had said, chemical weapons, that doesn't really change my said. And regardless of how it ended up playing, I think in the Beltway, what is true is Assad got rid of his chemical weapons. So there's that one. The next one I have is off of BizPac Review. Israel-Palestinian conflict. Summit warns against unilateral actions. Representatives of nations at a conference aimed at a kickstart peace talk between Israel and Palestinians have warned that neither side should take unilateral actions. In a statement, delegates at the summit in Paris also restated their commitment to the two-state solution. But they said, but they shied away from criticizing President-elect Donald Trump's suggested U.S. embassy move to Jerusalem. Palestinians welcomed the conference, but Israel called it rigged. Neither side was invited to participate in the day-long summit, which was attended by 70 nations, but they were invited to hear the conclusions. This led the UK government to question how effective the conference, which it decided to attend in an observer status, could be in solving the conflict. Can the Paris summit save the two-state solution? Why the settlement issues matter? Those are two links that you can click on in this article that will take you to those conclusions, so you can read those for yourself. This article continues and says, a Foreign Office statement said it had particular reservations about a conference intended to advance peace between the parties that does not involve them, adding that it had not signed up to the joint communique. It also expressed concerns about the timing of the event just days before Trump takes over as president and the opposition of Israel. The summit ended with the delegates warning that neither side should take unilateral steps that could jeopardize future negotiations. The U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry said his team insisted on language in the communique which condemned Palestinian attacks on Israel, making it more balanced. He had spoken to Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to reassure him that any proposal following on from the conference at the UN Security Council would be opposed by the U.S., Mr. Kerry added. Israel had been concerned that the conference might set the terms for a final agreement and seek to get it adopted at the UN, a move it feels would undermine future negotiations. The conference comes at a time of rising tension in the region, and there are fears President-elect Trump's plans to move the U.S. embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem could stroke it further. There was deep alarm among participants at the conference that if President Trump does break with decades of U.S. policy and move the embassy to Jerusalem, then conditions will be set for another upsurge in violence in the region, says the BBC's Hugh Schofield in Paris. The status of Jerusalem is one of the most sensitive and complex issues of the entire conflict. The Palestinians view East Jerusalem as the capital of their future state, but Israel proclaimed the entire city as its capital. French Foreign Minister Jean-Marc Ayrault told France 3 TV on Sunday he thought Mr. Trump would not be able to make the move, but if he did, it would have extremely serious consequences. On Saturday, Palestinian leader Mahmoud Abbas warned such a move could bury the hopes for a two-state solution. The last round of direct peace talks collapsed amid acrimony in April of 2014. The meeting also comes at a time of tension between Israel and the international community after the UN passed a resolution last month denouncing Israel's settlement activity on occupied land. Israel accused the Obama administration of engineering the motion, but the White House denied colluding to get it passed. Mr. Netanyahu has called the Paris meeting a rigged conference, which Israel would not be bounded by. The conference was attended by 5 permanent members of the UN Security Council, as well as key European and Arab states. In his speech to open the meeting, French President François Hollande said the international community had to be reminded of its obligations to build peace. The naivety is to believe needed reconciliation between Israel and its neighbors can go forward without peace between the Israelis and the Palestinians, he said. And the cynicism is to sink into the status quo, hoping the situation would find a natural solution as a result of all excesses. A two-state solution of a Palestinian country alongside Israel has long been endorsed by both sides, but are sharply divergent visions as to the type of state which should emerge. Israel rejects international involvement in the peace process, saying an agreement can only come through direct talks. Despite years of off and on peace talks, major differences still separate the two sides. Palestinians fiercely object to Israeli settlement activity in the occupied West Bank and East Jerusalem, territory it wants for a future state. Settlements, home to about 600,000 Israelis, are considered illegal under international law, though Israel disputes this. Israel says Palestinian incitement and violence and the refusal to accept Israel as a Jewish state are the key obstacles to peace. The next article that I have for you is off of the Salt Lake Tribune. And it says EPA says it can't pay economic damages from massive mine spill that tainted water in Utah. The Environmental Protection Agency announced Friday it will not repay claims totaling more than $1.2 billion for economic damages from the mine waste spill the agency accidentally triggered in Colorado, saying the law prohibits it. The EPA said the claim could be refiled in federal court or Congress could authorize payment. But attorneys for the EPA and the Justice Department concluded the EPA barred from paying the claims because the sovereign immunity, which prohibits most lawsuits against the government. The agency worked hard to find a way in which it could pay individuals for damages due to the incident, but unfortunately, our hands are tied, EPA spokeswoman Nancy Grantham said. The EPA said it spent more than $31.3 million on the spill, including remediation work, water testing, and payments to state, local, and tribal agencies. A total of 73 claims were filed, some by farmers who lost crops or had to haul water because rivers polluted by the spill were temporarily unusable for irrigation and livestock. Rafting companies and their employees sought lost income and wages because they couldn't take visitors on river trips. Some homeowners sought damages because they said their wells were affected. We had direct revenue losses of about $50,000 plus, said Alex McKell, owner of Mile to Wild Rafting in Durango, Colorado. McKell said the EPA had left him with the impression it would compensate for the economic losses. Me that they would do a complete reversal, he said in an interview. McKell said he would consult with his attorney on the next move. The August 2015 spill at the Gold King mine in southwestern Colorado released 3 million gallons of wastewater tainted with iron, aluminum, magnesium, lead, copper, and other metals. And San Juan rivers in Colorado, New Mexico, and Utah were polluted, with stretches of waterway turning an eerie orange-yellow. Some of the affected rivers passed through Indian reservations. Navajo Nation President Russell said the nation would keep pushing for compensation. To both the Navajo Nation and the farmers, he said, even today, people still question if the water is clean enough for farming, livestock, or human consumption. The EPA has said water quality in the rivers has returned to pre-spill conditions. Members of Congress expressed anger and disappointment at the EPA decision. Senators Tom Udall and Martin Henrich and Representative Ben Ray Lujan, all Democrats, accused the agency of reneging on a pledge. We are outraged at this last-ditch move by the federal government's lawyers to go back on the EPA's promise to people of the states of New Mexico and especially the Navajo Nation that it would fully address this environmental disaster that still plagues the people of the Four Corners region. Members of Colorado's congressional delegation said they would introduce legislation to repay economic damage. When the law allows the government to hide from those, the law must be changed, Colorado Republican Senator Cory Gardner said. An EPA-led contractor crew triggered the spill while doing exploratory excavation work at the mine entrance in advance of a possible cleanup. The Gold King is one of hundreds of inactive mines in the Colorado mountains that continuously spew polluted water into rivers or have potential to do so. The EPA has designated the area a Superfund site to pay for cleanup. Initial research is underway, and tribal officials have been harshly critical of the EPA for causing the spill and for its handling of the aftermath, including the costs. The Navajo Nation and the state of New Mexico have already sued the agency in federal court, and other lawsuits are likely after Friday's announcement. The EPA said it would pay $1 million to state, local, and tribal governments to cover the cost of their emergency response to the spill, but the agency rejected the $20.4 million in other requests for past and future expenses, again citing federal law. For you is off of BizPack Review, and it says Bikers for Trump will form wall of meat so rioters don't ruin the inauguration. Bring it, snowflakes. Bikers for Trump has a message for protesters planning to disrupt the Trump inauguration. Chris Cox, founder of Bikers for Trump, said the group plans to form a wall of meat to protect citizens at the presidential inauguration. Cox and 200,000 other motorcyclists will be in Washington, D.C. to provide backup to the police to ensure that protesters and rioters don't ruin the inauguration. The first line of defense is a wall of meat, he said. We will stand shoulder to shoulder with our brothers and toe to toe with anyone that's going to be breaking down the police barriers, assaulting women, spitting on them, throwing things, Cox told Fox News. And there is video in this if you care to take a look at that. Cox has full confidence the police are in the police to ensure order at the inauguration, but stands ready to back them up. We are here to support them, he said. Cox underscored that Bikers for Trump is not a vigilante organization, but they are a political force to be reckoned with, and woe to anyone who plans to cross them or Trump. Special groups, including one called Disrupt J20, are planning mass protests during Trump's inauguration. Leftist crybaby Michael Moore also vowed to disrupt the ceremonies. Hopefully, the protests will remain peaceful, but if they get out of hand, Bikers for Trump is ready to step in. We formed for the sole purpose of electing Donald Trump president, said Cox, whose group now stands lockstep behind our 45th president. Many on Twitter supported Bikers for Trump, saying, crybaby snowflakes better watch out. And there's a bunch of tweets in this if you care to take a look at those. Then we have the final article in this episode off of BizPack Review saying, nope, not true. Story about Trump meeting Putin in Iceland explodes and is false. Leftist fake news brigade is at it again. Donald Trump's first foreign trip as president will not be meeting Russian President Vladimir Putin in Iceland, as falsely bleated by the mainstream media. Incoming White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer took to Twitter Saturday night to alert the world that rumors that Trump will meet with Putin weeks after inauguration are 100% false. Spicer linked to a fake news story in The Hill, which cited a bogus report from the Sunday Times claiming Trump's first foreign trip meeting will be with Putin. Spicer also smacked down a Bloomberg headline that declared Donald Trump wants to hold summit with Vladimir Putin in Iceland on Sunday, Times reports. Spicer, okay, we got that. The fake news report was widely circulated by leftist media outlets like Yahoo News, Raw Story, The Guardian, and Bloomberg, which are desperately trying to push the narrative that Trump is a puppet of Putin. Many on Twitter pointed out that the liberals said nothing when Hillary Clinton traveled to Russia to suck up to Putin. Last week, BuzzFeed and CNN were widely slammed by both conservative and liberal media outlets for circulating a story that Russians had a blackmail dossier on Trump. Veteran intelligence officials have dismissed the dossier as fraudulent and slammed its author for violating basic standards for intelligence reporting. The barrage of lies being vomited around the clock by leftist media culminated in an unforgettable moment when Trump smacked down the biased CNN, declaring, "You are fake news." And it's got some tweets in this if you care to take a look at that, and some video. So we'll leave that for your perusal. And that's what I have for you in this episode. If you like what we're doing, give it a thumbs up, share it on your social media so we keep waking people up and keep getting the news out there so that people can hear what's really going on. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do. Click that little bell next to the subscription button, and a little box will pop up that you can check. That way, you will be able to get email alerts every time I put a show up, and that will keep you informed. See you on the next one.